Welcome to Twilight Tale, a quiet place where history slows down and the world gently fades into rest. Tonight, we travel back through time to an age of ancient empires where strategy shaped civilizations and battles were planned as carefully as the stars above. In this peaceful retelling, we'll explore the ancient art of war from Egypt, Greece, and Rome, not through the noise of conflict, but through calm understanding, soft stories, and timeless wisdom. There is nothing you need to remember, nothing you need to imagine too clearly. Simply listen, let the rhythm of history carry you, and allow your mind to rest. Settle in, breathe slowly, and let the past lull you into sleep. The wind whispers as the first light of dawn touches the sands of Egypt. The desert, vast and endless, holds its breath, waiting. There is no movement yet, no footfall to disturb the stillness. The horizon holds only the faintest suggestion of a sun yet to rise, painting the world in shades of soft amber, a quiet prelude to a day that has yet to begin. It is here, at the edge of time, that the story unfolds. Imagine a single stone scale, weathered and ancient, resting upon the earth. The scale is carved from alabaster, its once gleaming surface now dulled by the endless march of years. And in the quiet desert air, it seems almost to breathe, pulsing with the weight of its own mystery. One side holds a delicate feather, soft and fragile, as though it were a dream plucked from the wings of the divine. The other side bears a sword, its blade gleaming faintly, as if still hungry for battle, though no hand has held it in ages. And beneath this symbol, beneath the feather and the blade, lies the silence of Egypt itself. It is said that in the time of Egypt's golden kings, before the armies of Pharaoh marched to the rhythm of war drums, there was a deeper silence, a silence in which all things waited, paused between breath and action, between intention and consequence. The great desert, stretched wide and infinite, became a space of stillness, where time seemed to bend, where even the wind held its voice. In this stillness, the balance of life and death, of war and peace, was pondered and prepared in ways unseen, unseen by all but those who could listen. Beneath the breathless sky, the desert ground stretches out endlessly, empty save for the soft outlines of ruins buried beneath the sands. Pillars of stone, forgotten and crumbling, jut out from the earth like ancient sentinels watching over the land. The air is thick with a sense of something ancient, something timeless, waiting to be known. Here, in this sacred stillness, Egypt prepares not for war, but for balance. Beneath the silence, beneath the watchful eyes of the stars, there is a quiet dance unfolding, one not of violence, but of sacred symmetry. The art of war in Egypt was never one of destruction, but of restoration. It was said that the priests and generals, those entrusted with the fate of the kingdom, did not look to the weapons of men, but to the weapons of the heavens. They watched the heavens, listened to the land, and sought the hidden harmonies between the stars and the earth. They believed that war was not won by strength alone, but by the perfect alignment of all forces, cosmic, earthly, and unseen. In the sacred halls of Egypt, where the air was thick with incense and the flickering shadows of torchlight, there were scrolls, ancient and weathered, that spoke of Ma'at, of order and truth, of balance in all things. Ma'at was the quiet force that held the world together, the invisible thread that tied the heavens to the earth, that made the stars move in their precise courses, that caused the floods of the Nile to return each year. It was said that without Ma'at, the world would fall into chaos, and so it was with war. It was not enough to strike, one had to strike in harmony with Ma'at, to restore balance, to bring about a greater good.
But how does one prepare for such a battle, when the weapon is not simply a sword, but an alignment of forces? How does one approach the art of war as a sacred act, as a restoration of balance, and not a glorification of blood? How does a civilization devoted to peace prepare itself for violence? The answer, perhaps, lies in the way the priests and generals viewed the world, not as a battlefield, but as a delicate dance. They listened to the land, they listened to the wind, they heard the subtle movements beneath the earth, the tremors of the stones beneath their feet. They watched the flight of birds, the changing of the seasons, the way the stars shifted ever so slightly in the sky above. It was said that every movement had its purpose, every gesture its reason. Even the smallest shift in the wind could signal a change in fortune. And so, the generals would stand in the silence of the desert, their feet sinking into the sand, their hands tracing the invisible lines of the world around them. They would wait for the moment when the wind shifted, when the shadows fell in a certain way, when the stars aligned in perfect harmony. It was only then, when the land itself whispered the answer, that they would move. In this way, the Egyptian art of war was an act of deep listening, a communion with the land, the sky, and the unseen forces that guided them. It was a ritual, not of bloodshed, but of preparation, of finding the exact moment when action would be most effective, most in harmony with the world. War, then, was not a thing to be feared or glorified, but a necessary act of restoration, an offering to the gods to restore balance when it was threatened. And yet, there is a contradiction that lingers, one that remains unanswered, suspended between the shadows. For how does a civilization that believes in the quiet order of the universe, in the peaceful movement of stars and rivers, prepare for violence? Perhaps it is in the way they viewed the blade itself. Perhaps the blade was not a tool of destruction, but a tool of precision, of cutting through the fabric of time and space to restore the balance that had been disturbed. Perhaps the feather, light and fragile, symbolized the breath of life itself, the delicate balance between life and death, creation and destruction. The feather and the blade were not opposites, but two halves of the same whole, two forces that must coexist in perfect harmony. The generals, the priests, they knew this. They understood the balance between light and dark, between peace and war. They did not seek to glorify the blade, but to understand it, to use it only when necessary, when the scales tipped too far in one direction. It was said that those who could not find this balance, those who could not see the divine symmetry between war and peace, were the ones who lost, not in battle, but in the very act of living. And so, in the early hours of the morning, beneath the endless sky, the desert waits once more. The stone scale remains, its surface warm from the first light of dawn. the feather and the blade in perfect balance, one never tipping too far, one never outweighing the other. The moment has not yet come. The armies remain still, the shadows holding their breath. The silence lingers, deep and ancient, as the stars slowly fade from the sky.
Perhaps it was never meant to be found, the answer to the riddle of balance before the blade. Perhaps some mysteries are best left unsolved, left to rest beneath the moonlit stone, to echo in the silence of the desert, to be lost in the wind. And as the sun rises, casting its golden light across the sands, the balance remains, the feather and the sword, poised in perfect harmony, and the desert breathes, waiting for the next breath of time to shift. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen, and in the silence of the desert, the answer is not always heard but felt, deep in the bones, deep in the heart. Perhaps the true victory lies in the waiting. As the sun rises fully, the sands return to their quiet hum, and the scale, forever still, remains at the edge of time where myth and memory meet. The silence lingers on. In the stillness of a torchlit chamber, the flickering flames cast long, wavering shadows on the stone walls. The air smells faintly of incense and ancient parchment, thick with the weight of decisions yet to be made. On the cold, weathered table before him, a map is spread, its edges frayed, its colors dimmed by time. The general, unnamed in history, stands before the map with his fingers gently tracing the worn lines, his eyes quiet with thought. Around him the room hums softly, as though the very stone walls are listening. The plans that lie before him are drawn carefully, with slow, deliberate strokes, yet there is a tension that lingers in the air, a silence that wraps itself around each line. He does not speak, he does not hurry. His hand lifts from the map, pausing in mid-air, and then, as if guided by some unseen force, he erases a line. The movement is slow, almost reverent, as if the act of undoing carries as much weight as the act of creation. The line disappears into nothingness, a decision made and unmade in the same breath. The general's face remains calm, his gaze distant, as if listening to a voice beyond the walls, beyond the confines of the room. Outside, the river waits, the stars shift, the world holds its breath. In Egypt, the great flow of the Nile is not simply a river, but a living presence, its waters swelling and retreating in rhythms known only to those who listen deeply. The general knows that it is not time yet. The soldiers stand ready, their armor shining faintly in the half-light of the torch, but they do not march. The armies wait, and in their waiting they are not idle. They listen to the land, to the subtle stirrings of the earth beneath their feet. They wait for the river to rise, for the stars to align, for the moment when the world itself will say, now. In the shadows of the temple, the priests murmur in quiet prayers, their words more like breaths than speeches, their faces marked by the weight of their sacred duty. The general knows this, and he listens as they listen. It is said that the greatest victories are won not by strength, but by patience, that the fiercest of generals, those who are remembered in songs and stories, were not those who rushed into battle, but those who stood still, waiting for the world to tell them when the moment had arrived. And in this moment, in the heart of Egypt, the general learns that waiting is not weakness, but alignment. It is not the absence of action, but the deepest form of devotion. He has learned to listen, to hear the unseen forces that move beyond the horizon, to wait for the winds to shift, for the stars to fall into their sacred patterns. The generals of Egypt, it is said, did not command armies with blind authority, but with the quiet understanding that all things must come into harmony before action is taken.
The map before him holds more than just the lines of battle. It holds the pulse of the world itself. With each stroke of the quill, the general brings the land to life, and yet he knows that no victory can be found here, in the planning, in the waiting. The true victory lies in what is not done. The true battle is fought in the silence between breaths, in the moments when the generals of the land stand still, watching, waiting, listening. Whispers tell us that there were battles fought in the sands of Egypt that never happened, not because the armies feared the fight, but because they listened, they waited. They knew that the alignment of the stars was not yet right, that the river had not yet risen to its fullness, that the time had not yet come. Some moments, it is said, must be allowed to pass in their own time. Not every battle is one that needs to be fought. Not every victory requires blood. The greatest generals, the ones whose names are whispered in reverence, were those who knew this. They were those who understood that sometimes the most powerful weapon in the world is the one that lies still in the sheath. The chambers of the temple grow dimmer as the night deepens, and the general moves, his steps silent on the stone floor. He turns away from the map, stepping back into the shadows, away from the light of the torch, away from the weight of the decisions he has made and undone. His heart beats slowly, in time with the land, in time with the river, in time with the pulse of Egypt itself. And as he fades into the darkness, the only sound is the soft rustling of papyrus, the quiet hum of the night. Outside, the stars hang low in the sky, their light casting faint shadows across the desert. The winds stir gently, whispering of the great mysteries of the world. In the distance, the Nile moves slowly, patiently, winding its way through the land, and the general, standing now in the quiet of the temple, feels the weight of the world upon his shoulders. It is not a burden, but a gift, to wait, to listen, to align oneself with the rhythms of the earth and the heavens. That is the true power. Perhaps some battles are never meant to be fought. Perhaps some decisions are best left unwritten. Perhaps the greatest victory lies in the ability to choose not to begin the fight at all. The night stretches on, the stars shifting ever so slightly in the sky. The general, still hidden in shadow, breathes deeply. His greatest victory, it seems, was not in the battle he might have won, but in the battle he chose not to fight. The map lies still on the table, the lines both drawn and erased, the weight of the decision lingering in the air like the smoke of incense. It is in this silence, in this stillness, that the greatest wisdom resides. As the moon rises high above the temple, casting its pale light over the desert, the general steps back once more, his form disappearing into the quiet shadows of the sacred space. The moment is not yet right. The battle will come, when the time is aligned, when the river rises, when the stars shift once again. But for now, there is only the stillness, the waiting, the listening. And so the chamber grows quiet once more, the flame of the torch flickering softly in the darkness,
as the world outside waits for the moment when the general will step forward again. But for now, he remains hidden in the shadow, his greatest victory already sealed in the silence. Perhaps in the end, the victory is not in the battle at all, but in the waiting and in the silence that follows. As the evening light gently fades across the Greek plain, there is a moment, still, suspended, that seems to stretch into infinity. The air, cool and damp with the breath of dusk, stirs the tall grasses, but it is the ground beneath that draws the eye. The shields, placed side by side in perfect rows, lie as though they belong to a single sleeping body, each disc catching the last flickers of light. The gleaming bronze catches the pale glow of the sun sinking below the horizon, their surface reflecting a unity that feels almost sacred. The shields are still, and so is everything around them. Even the wind seems to pause, waiting for something, a signal, a sound, a breath. In this quiet moment, the plain holds more than just steel and dust. It holds a rhythm, an invisible force that binds these shields, these soldiers, these men into a single collective body. The strategy of war here is not one of chaos or rage, but of harmony, an art of unity that binds the individual to the whole. Each shield is a piece of the same song, each breath an echo of the others. There is a silence that speaks louder than any battle cry, a stillness that pulses with the power of shared purpose. It is said that the Greek phalanx, the great formation of warriors, was not simply a strategy of war, but a philosophy of life. Here, war is not the sudden clash of swords, but the slow, deliberate dance of bodies moving together, each man's movement mirroring that of the one beside him. The soldiers do not rush, do not break rank. They breathe as one, move as one. Every step taken, every shield raised is in perfect harmony with the others. This is the art of war, not speed, not fury, but proportion, balance, and rhythm. The Greeks did not fight as individuals, but as a unified presence, a collective force that transcended personal identity. In the distance, a single figure, his face obscured by the shadow of his shield, lifts his arm, his breath deepening as he prepares to rise. He is part of something larger than himself, his movement an echo of those beside him. The breath he draws is not only his own, it is shared with the others in the formation. The rhythm of his chest matches theirs. In the quiet before the storm, before the clash of bronze and blood, there is a deeper sound, a slow and steady pulse that beats not only in his body, but in the collective heart of the phalanx. Each soldier, though an individual, is connected in a way that cannot be undone. In this unity, there is no separation, no distance between them. They are not merely soldiers, they are the embodiment of a single thought, a single idea, a single will. Whispers tell us that the Greeks believed this unity could not simply be achieved through discipline, but through the very philosophy that guided their lives. Order, proportion, and balance were not just the tenets of their art of war, they were the guiding principles of their lives. Even in battle, the Greeks sought harmony. The phalanx was not a chaotic collision of men and metal, but a dance, one in which each participant moved with the same rhythm, each step in perfect alignment with the others. It was said that in the phalanx a single man could not act without affecting the others. Every decision, every movement was part of a greater whole. It was not just a battle, it was a shared breath, a shared intention. As the night deepens, the soldiers stand in their silent formation, their shields resting against the ground, untouched by the hand of war. The air grows cool, the light of the setting sun fading into a soft twilight. The rhythm of the battlefield, once sharp and urgent, softens with the night. No clash of weapons, no war cries, only the quiet stillness of men who have learned that there is strength in restraint. The phalanx exists not in the act of war, but in its potential, the moment before the first movement, before the first breath, before the first strike. The land around them is still, frozen in time, as if the very earth itself is holding its breath. The shields, once bright with the gleam of daylight, now glow faintly in the soft light of the evening. The formation, so carefully arranged, remains untouched, the promise of action suspended in the quiet. The soldiers, their bodies poised in this perfect moment of alignment, feel the pull of something larger than themselves, something that moves them not just as warriors, but as part of a living force, a collective energy that will move when the time is right. Perhaps this is the greatest lesson the phalanx offers, that war, like life, is not a rush of violence, but a dance of moments. Each man, each breath, each step is part of a larger rhythm, a shared understanding that cannot be broken. The battlefield is not simply a place where men fight, but a place where they unite, where they dissolve their individual identities into something greater, something more eternal. In the quiet of the evening, in the shadow of the shields, the soldiers are not alone. They are part of a greater whole, a force that transcends their individual lives, their individual struggles. And yet, there is a contradiction that hums gently beneath this quiet unity. The Greeks were a people who cherished freedom above all else, who fought to preserve the liberty of their city-states, their rights as individuals. And yet, here, in this moment, they have chosen something else: unity, discipline, and restraint. The very men who sought the freedom to live as they chose now stand together, bound by the shared rhythm of their breath, their bodies moving in perfect harmony. It is a paradox, a question that lingers in the stillness. How can freedom-loving men surrender themselves so completely to the collective will? How can they choose unity over independence? Perhaps the answer lies in the balance itself, in the knowledge that true freedom is not the absence of restraint, but the harmony of all things moving together. In the phalanx, each man is free, not as an individual, but as part of a whole. Each breath taken, each movement made, is not a loss of freedom, but an embrace of it, an understanding that freedom is not only the right to act as one wishes, but the ability to act in unison with those around you. As the night falls completely, the soldiers remain still. The shields, now covered in the soft blanket of twilight, seem to glow faintly, a quiet promise of the battle that will one day come. But for now, there is no battle, no clash of steel. There is only the silence, the waiting, the shared breath of the phalanx, untouched and unbroken. The rhythm of the world is at rest, held in the balance of this perfect moment. Perhaps it was never meant to be found, the true power of the phalanx. Perhaps it was not in the battle, not in the victory, but in the space between breaths, in the unity that transcends the individual. Perhaps the greatest strength of the phalanx lies not in the clash of shields, but in the quiet moments of alignment, those moments when the soldiers, each one alone, stand together as one. And as the stars twinkle softly above the Greek plain, the shields rest in their perfect harmony, waiting for the breath of the universe to shift, for the rhythm to begin once more. In that stillness, we are left suspended, a thought not yet spoken, a breath not yet taken, and perhaps in that moment we too become part of the shared rhythm, the shared breath of the phalanx. Under the cool gaze of the moon, a silence wraps the battlefield. The earth is soft beneath the soles of the soldiers' feet, the ground gently giving way with each step. Yet there is no sound, no rush. The night itself seems to hold its breath, watching, waiting. A Greek commander stands alone, his eyes cast downward, focused on the distance before him. His fingers, gloved in the quiet of night, count the spaces between each step taken. 1, 2, 3. The numbers rise like the steady beat of a heart, echoing in the stillness. Each footfall is a deliberate act, a careful calculation, as though the very distance between him and his soldiers were a measure of something far greater than time. Above him, the moon rests like a silent witness, its light pale and soft, spilling across the earth, casting long shadows that stretch into infinity. The world is divided into lines of light and shadow, and the commander, bound by an ancient understanding, begins to mark these divisions in his mind. He feels the weight of each step, not only beneath his feet, but in the air around him. This is no ordinary march. It is a dance of geometry, of spacing, of measured rhythm. It is said that war was never just about the clash of swords, but the understanding of space, how distance itself could be shaped into a weapon. As his boots sink into the earth, the commander knows that every movement is part of a larger whole. The battlefield is not a place of chaos, but of geometry made human. Lines of attack are not drawn with pens on parchment, but with bodies in motion. It is not enough to be strong, to be fast. One must understand the precise angles, the subtle arcs, the measure of distance between allies and enemies alike. There is a rhythm to it, a slow unfolding of intention, a pulse that flows through the air and is felt in the ground beneath. The myth of the gods, of Apollo and Athena, speaks not just of strength, but of balance. In ancient Greece, it is whispered that even the gods knew the value of proportion. In their temples, the pillars stand tall and steadfast, not just for their grandeur, but for their precision, their height, their width. Each dimension is carefully calculated, designed to stand in perfect harmony with the world around them. The commander knows this, feels it. The divine geometry is not just in the marble of the temples or the designs of the gods, but in the movements of men. A battle is won not just with force, but with the precision of placement, the elegance of timing. It is said that the generals of old would spend hours, sometimes days, mapping the battlefield not in terms of strategy, but of rhythm, the distance between the lines, the space between the ranks, the angle at which a unit would move. It was all part of the same sacred geometry that governed the heavens. In this, the commander places his trust. The gods may guide the stars, but it is the understanding of distance, the ability to feel the weight of each step, that guides the warriors. The slow march of the soldiers is like the turning of a wheel, steady, deliberate, unhurried. Each soldier feels the distance between himself and the man beside him, and in that space there is strength. The rhythm becomes one. The commander's pulse mirrors theirs, as if they were all moving not in separate bodies, but in a single body, one that knows when to advance, when to halt, when to pause and breathe. The wind stirs lightly, a breath from the earth. The commander pauses in his counting, closing his eyes for a moment to listen. The sounds of the soldiers behind him are muffled, as if they too understand the power of stillness. There is a quiet intimacy in this moment, a deep connection not only between soldiers, but between the earth itself, between the moon and the divine geometry of the world. The space between them is sacred. It is not just the measure of distance, but of purpose. The principles passed down by the generals of old were not written in books, but carried on the wind, spoken from one to another. A breath of wisdom passed from mentor to student, from soldier to commander. These teachings were not inked onto papyrus or carved into stone. They were felt, known in the body, in the bones. It is said that there were forgotten truths, half-remembered principles that held the key to victory, not in the drawing of swords, but in the ability to pause, to hold back, to know when the time was not yet right. The Greeks knew that control lay not in constant movement, but in the knowing of when not to advance. As the moon climbs higher in the sky, the commander's footsteps come to an abrupt halt. No command has been given, no word has been spoken. The soldiers stop with him as if by instinct, their formation flowing into stillness, a single pulse held in the moment. In this pause, this sacred stillness between steps, the battle is won. There is no need for words, there is only the space between breaths, the shared understanding of those who know that war is not only fought in the clash of weapons, but in the space that lies between them. The stillness is profound, and in that silence the world speaks. The earth beneath his feet seems to hum with the tension of that moment. The stars above twinkle softly, as though they too recognize the sacredness of this pause. The moon, full and bright, watches over the battlefield, casting long shadows that stretch toward the horizon. The soldiers are not just waiting for the battle to begin, they are waiting for the moment when the geometry of the world shifts, when the timing is right, when the breath of the earth and the breath of the soldiers align. In this moment, the commander is neither leader nor warrior. He is part of the rhythm, part of the sacred dance of the world. He understands that victory comes not just in movement, but in the ability to wait, to listen to the earth, to feel the pulse of the world, to recognize the perfect moment when action is not only needed, but inevitable. The night stretches on, the air cool and still, as the soldiers remain in place. The battle, for now, is but a distant memory, a story not yet written. The shields remain untouched, the swords still sheathed. There is only the pause, the sacred space between steps, where time itself seems to hold its breath. The world, for a moment, is perfect in its stillness. Perhaps it was never meant to be found, the true meaning of distance, the power of the pause. Perhaps it was always hidden in the space between actions, in the silence between breaths. Perhaps some wisdom is not meant to be known, only felt. And as the moon watches over the plain, casting its soft light on the soldiers, there is no need for movement, no need for command. The battle will come when the time is right. But for now, there is only the space between breaths, the sacred rhythm of the world, and the silence that holds them all. The night unfolds, stretching across the Roman landscape, where the earth holds secrets whispered by time. The stars above, ancient witnesses, gleam faintly as the world beneath them settles into an eerie stillness. There is no sign of soldiers, no clash of shields or cries of warriors, only the long, winding stretch of a road laid down by hands long since turned to dust. The Roman road, firm and purposeful, stretches across the land as if it is part of the earth itself, no beginning, no end, only the soft, steady presence of stone. The path is simple yet profound, its edges sharp against the soft silhouette of the hills in the distance. Each stone, each carefully placed slab feels like the pulse of an empire, its rhythm felt in the very earth. It is said that before Rome marched to war, before the battle cries echoed across the lands, there was a path, a road built in the quiet of night, under the watch of the stars. It is a road of foresight, not haste, a road where every stone is placed not for the feet that will tread upon it, but for the vision of what is to come. The road, silent and unmarked by the passing of time, holds its purpose in the dust beneath the stars. It speaks not of battles already won, but of those yet to unfold, as if the empire's very destiny lies in the rhythm of its construction. The road is not just a path of stone, it is a promise made before the first footstep falls, a discipline carved into the land before the clash of arms, a promise that supplies will be carried, that camps will be set, and that strategies will unfold long before soldiers can march. This is Rome's art of war, an art of preparation, of anticipation. It is said that the greatest victories were not won in the rush of battle, but in the slow, steady work that came before, the careful placement of camps, the knowing of where to rest and where to strike, the quiet foresight that turned the empire into a living, breathing thing. War, for the Romans, was not an act of sudden violence, but of deliberate steps taken long before the first blow was struck. As the stars glimmer overhead, the road continues, winding through valleys, crossing rivers, curving gently beneath the weight of ancient trees. The stones, worn by time yet still resolute, seem to hum with purpose. In the stillness, one can almost hear the echo of boots that have yet to fall upon them, of soldiers whose names will never be known. The road is empty now, but in its emptiness lies the quiet energy of what is to come. It is not yet time for the soldiers, but the road has already been built, the route already measured. Every curve, every rise, every descent has been calculated, an art of war that lives in the very geography of the land. The road is not a simple thing, but a manifestation of foresight. It was laid down by hands that knew how to think beyond the horizon, beyond the next battle, beyond the next move. The Roman strategist did not see war as a series of isolated events, but as a continuous flow of thought, each action leading to the next, each moment shaped by what came before.
The road, then, is not just a road, it is a map of the empire's future drawn in the earth before the first soldier is called to march. There is no room for haste, no place for thoughtless action. The Romans understood that war was not only about the act of battle, but the preparation that made it possible, the discipline of anticipation, the quiet respect for the land and the people who would one day walk upon it, was as important as the strength of any soldier's arm. Beneath the stars, beneath the moon, the road stretches forward. There is no end in sight, only the sense that the road continues forever, disappearing into the night, as if the empire's reach extends far beyond the horizon. The earth beneath the road seems to whisper, as if in response to the weight of Rome's presence. The road is not just a physical path, it is an invitation, an offering. It is said that when the Romans built their roads, they were not only creating a way to move armies, but a way to move the very spirit of the empire, to tie all parts of their world together in a network of precision and purpose. But there is a contradiction that breathes softly beneath the calm. For every road that brings order, there is the potential for conquest. The roads, the empire's veins stretching across the land, carry more than just soldiers, they carry power. The very act of building these roads, of carving out these paths, is an act of dominance. The roads make it possible to transport armies, to reach new lands, to claim new territory. In the stillness of the night, the road beneath the stars is both a symbol of the empire's vastness and its quiet, inevitable expansion. Perhaps this is the truth of Rome. The roads, the stones, the preparations, they are both a promise and a warning. The empire's greatness was built on the foundation of foresight and preparation, but it was also built on the idea that the world must be shaped, must be ordered, must be claimed. The road itself becomes a metaphor for the empire, its vastness, its ambition, and the quiet power that drives it forward. And yet, as the moon casts its silver light over the road, as the night settles deeply into the land, there is no movement. There are no soldiers, no generals, no campfires flickering in the distance. The road lies silent, its purpose dormant beneath the dust. The earth hums softly beneath it, the air still and heavy with the weight of what will come. But for now, there is only the road, stretching into the distance, leading toward the unknown, toward the future. Its purpose is patient, its intention sleeping, waiting for the first step, the first command, the first breath of the soldiers who will one day walk it. The road does not need to speak. It exists as a testament to Rome's understanding of time, of preparation, of the quiet discipline that shapes an empire. The road's power lies not in its use, but in its stillness, in its silence, in the waiting that lies beneath its surface. For now, the road remains, stretching under the moonlit sky, its stones steady, its purpose clear, its intention held in the spaces between each step. Perhaps the true power of the road is not in where it leads, but in the space it holds, in the quiet moments before movement, before action, before the battle begins. Perhaps it was never meant to be found, the full measure of the empire's reach, the depth of its preparation. Perhaps some truths are not meant to be spoken, only felt, deep in the earth, deep in the silence. As the road continues into the dark, the empire remains in its pause. The path waits, patient and full of promise, its purpose held in the silence beneath the stars.
Night comes to the Roman camp the way a lid settles onto a lamp, slowly, softly, with a final hush that makes the flame feel brighter. Beyond the last ridge of grass and stone, beyond the low breath of the darkening fields, the camp sits as a square of intention laid upon the earth. Its perimeter is a quiet sentence written in timber and rope. Its ditch is a shallow shadow. Its palisade, a patient fence of sharpened stakes, stands not as threat, but as boundary, an outline drawn around fear so it cannot spill into everything. At the gate, 2 torches burn with steady humility. Their light does not leap, it does not boast, it only pours itself over the wood and the iron fittings, over the dust that clings to the grain like old pollen. The entrance is an arch of discipline, an opening that teaches the body how to enter another rhythm. Outside is the wide, uncertain world. Inside is measure. It is said that Rome did not first conquer with swords. Whispers tell us she conquered with repetition. Inside the camp, the sounds are small. A strap creaks, a pot lid settles, a stone is nudged into place. The air is filled with that thin, almost sacred fragrance of oiled leather, iron warmed by the day, ash from cooking fires, and the faint sweetness of crushed herbs under sandals. And yet sandals, tonight, are lined neatly, their toes aligned as if they too have learned obedience. Armor is stacked with care, helmets nestled into the curve of shields, mail folded like dark water, greaves laid parallel, buckles facing the same direction. Nothing here lies by accident, even stillness has rules. Beneath the silence, the camp is a gentle machine, and every part of it knows where to rest. The legion is here, but it does not announce itself with voices, it announces itself with order. There are no boasts rising to the stars, only low murmurs that do not disturb the night. The men have done what they were taught to do in daylight, dig, stack, measure, align, and now they do what they were taught to do in darkness, quiet the body, quiet the mind, become small inside the larger shape. Discipline in this place is not a whip cracking in the air, it is a cradle, it is a gentle cage, and the strange tenderness of it is this: the cage is built not to punish, but to hold the wildness that lives behind ribs, to hold the racing animal of the heart, to hold the trembling that arrives when one remembers too clearly how thin the skin is and how quickly it breaks. Where memory fades, stone remembers. A Roman camp is a kind of stone memory, even when it is made of wood and earth. It is built in the same pattern again and again, so often that the ground itself begins to anticipate it. The streets inside are clean lines through dust. The tents sit in obedient rows like folded wings. Ropes stretch taut, making a geometry of restraint. Pegs bite into soil with a quiet certainty. And between these lines, between these angles, fear becomes smaller, folded, tucked, contained. There is something almost celestial about it. Look up, and the sky is scattered with star-marked silence, a dark roof studded with distant points of cold fire. Look down, and the camp mirrors it with its own constellations, torchlights, embers, the faint glint of metal laid carefully to sleep. Above and below, patterns. Above and below, order. It is said the Romans loved straight lines because straight lines do not argue. They do not waver when the mind does. They do not betray you in the middle of the night. And so the legion rests inside straight lines, inside repeated gestures, inside small rituals that become stronger than panic. A buckle is tightened the same way each time. A shield is set down at the same angle. A blade is wiped until it reflects torchlight like a narrow river. These acts are not hurried. they are slow enough to feel like prayer, and perhaps they are. Because prayer is also repetition, prayer is also containment, prayer is also the shaping of breath into something steady. Somewhere near the center of camp, a cooking fire exhales its last warmth. The coals glow with a faded copper heart, dimming in gentle pulses, as if trying to remember the sun. A kettle, blackened and quiet, sits in the ash like a small temple bell that has forgotten how to ring. Nearby, a wooden bowl is turned upside down, empty as a closed mouth. Even hunger is disciplined here, told when to rise, told when to sleep. Marked by the moon, the camp becomes softer. Moonlight spills across the ground, turning dust into silver film, turning rope shadows into long, thin calligraphy. It touches a stack of javelins and makes them look less like weapons and more like reeds at the edge of a river, still, upright, waiting. It finds the curved lip of a helmet and fills it with pale glow, as if the helmet is a small bowl meant to catch the night. And then, in a quieter corner, half veiled by hanging cloth and the lingering smoke of torches, rests something the camp treats with special silence, the standard. Not held high tonight, not cutting the air, not demanding eyes. It is wrapped, veiled, like a sacred object sleeping.
Cloth gathers around the metal as if trying to protect it from too much meaning. If an eagle's wings are there, they are folded away from the world. If gold is there, it is hidden under dull fabric. This is how discipline keeps even pride contained. This is how it prevents the soul from burning too bright. Because Rome understood something ancient, an uncontained flame will consume its own house. And so the camp is built like a house for flames, for fear, for courage, for longing, for the thoughts that come when a body is finally allowed to stop moving. Whispers tell us the inner lives of these soldiers rarely reached ink. Their names might appear in a list. Their pay might be recorded. Their victories might be carved onto stone. But the quiet parts, the dreams, the doubts, the soft ache for a home beyond the horizon, those were not often written down. They lived in breath, in the pause before sleep, in the private dark behind the eyes. Sometimes the only trace is small, a scratch on a buckle, a carved spiral on the back of a wooden comb, a tiny notch on a tent peg that no one else would notice, a crude star etched into a scabbard's leather, a single word pressed into wax and then smoothed away, as if the writer feared even the wax might remember. Beneath the silence, each man becomes a mystery, and yet the Legion as a whole is not a mystery at all. It is a rhythm. Listen closely, not to voices, but to the soft consensus of the camp, the near simultaneous settling of bodies, the same kind of exhale repeated across many chests, the way the night seems to deepen more quickly because so many minds agree to let it deepen. Discipline shapes impulse into obedience, yes, but it also shapes many separate nights into one shared night. It takes loneliness and arranges it into rows, so it does not wander. It takes fear and gives it a perimeter. It sets the sharp, restless desire to flee and sets it down like armor, neatly, carefully, in its proper place. Outside the palisade, the world remains what it has always been: fields that can hide enemies, roads that carry rumors, forests that whisper with unseen eyes. There are places where the air tastes like metal because violence has passed through it. There are villages that watch the horizon with narrowed hope. There are rivers that carry reflections of stars without caring who drinks them. Inside the camp, the Legion makes a different world. Not kinder, perhaps, but clearer. A contradiction lives here, quietly breathing behind the order. The same structure that calms fear is also the structure that makes war possible. The same gentle cage that holds the soldier steady can also carry him, step by step, toward a morning where discipline becomes motion, and motion becomes clash. And yet, tonight, the cage is gentle. Tonight, it holds conflict quietly at bay. It holds the blade in its sleep. A soft wind moves across the camp, catching a loose flap of canvas, making it rise and fall like a slow breath. The rope lines hum faintly. Dust drifts in thin sheets over the packed earth, settling again, each grain finding its own obedience. Somewhere a small owl calls once and then stops, as if reminded that this is a place that prefers silence. Then it comes. Not a shout, not a trumpet's bright command. A bell. A single bronze note, low and round, traveling through the camp like warm water through stone. It does not startle, it does not pierce. It gathers the remaining movement into stillness. It tells hands to stop, tells eyes to soften, tells thoughts to loosen their grip. Armor remains stacked, fires remain dim, the standard remains veiled, the streets remain straight. And the legion, this vast, disciplined body, breathes as one, not with effort, but with surrender. A shared exhale, a shared quiet, a shared permission to rest. Perhaps it was never meant to be recorded, this kind of victory. No enemy routed, no city taken, only the unseen triumph of restraint, only the calm made by structure, only the gentle cage holding the night in its arms. And as the bell's echo fades into the dust, the camp becomes a softer silhouette under the moon, an ordered square of shadow, while beyond it, the world waits, patient and unfinished, as if even history itself has decided to pause between steps. The night is still, like a breath held at the edge of time. In the cool air of the Egyptian desert, the ground is cracked and silent, worn by the centuries, but still full of secrets. Above, the stars shimmer with the wisdom of ages, their faint light touching the earth below in a quiet dance of shadows. Beneath this celestial canopy, a circle of priests and generals stands together in the dim light of a single fire. The smoke rises, thick and slow, curling upward like the soft, rhythmic pulse of the earth itself, seeking answers from the heavens. It is said that before every great decision, before the swords were drawn, before the armies marched, there was a moment of waiting, a moment when the gods were asked to decide. But in that silence, beneath the flickering shadows, the question was not simply what the gods would say. The question was whether the gods themselves had any clear answer at all. The smoke rises and twists, seemingly answering no one, but speaking in a language that only those who listen deeply can begin to understand. The priests, their robes heavy with the dust of the desert, stand motionless, their eyes fixed upon the rising tendrils of smoke. The generals beside them do not speak either. They too wait, not for the sound of an answer, but for the quiet stirring of fate. The smoke curls upward as if to catch the attention of the gods themselves, who dwell in the realm of the stars, the dreams, the winds. These gods are not easily understood. They do not answer with clear words, but with symbols. the rustle of a bird's wings, the sway of trees, the movement of bones. These are their voices. And so the generals stand at the edge of this silence, where the weight of their decisions rests lightly on the bones of those who came before them. In Egypt, in Greece, in Rome, there was always this moment, a moment when divination became not a last resort, but a first act. Before the roar of battle, there was the stillness of the omen, the breath of the universe held in the smoke. What was the wind saying? What was the rustling of the leaves? What did the birds whisper as they flew past the temple? These were the questions that held the weight of an empire's future, the very balance between life and death. And yet, even as the gods were asked to speak, their answers were not clear. The smoke thins, its message dissipating into the cool night air. In Egypt, divination was a sacred ritual, as old as the land itself. The priests, their faces shrouded in the mystery of the gods, knew the language of the stars. They listened to the sky, watched the flight of birds, read the movement of the stars across the heavens. The generals, standing at their side, knew how to listen too, how to catch the meaning in the pause between breaths, in the silence between words. For in the silence there was guidance. But silence, too, can be confusing. In Greece, the priests would sit in the shadow of Delphi, near the sacred oracle, and listen for the god's breath. They would listen for the whisper of Apollo, who spoke not in words, but in riddles. The generals would wait, their hearts beating in rhythm with the earth, for the message that would guide them. But what happens when the message is unclear, when the signs are ambiguous, when the smoke refuses to rise in the pattern one expects? What happens when the gods speak, but they do not answer? The Greeks, too, knew that divination was not merely about seeking answers. It was about finding the courage to listen, even when the answers remained hidden. In their temples, they lit incense, and the smoke would curl into the air like a question, a prayer offered up to the heavens. But sometimes the answers did not come as they expected. The birds flew west instead of east. The bones cracked in a pattern that made no sense. The smoke, once thick and steady, faltered and scattered in the wind. Was it the gods, or was it something deeper within the hearts of the generals? The fear, the doubt, the uncertainty that moved in them like the pulse of a distant storm. And in Rome, too, divination was an art woven into the fabric of the empire. The haruspices, the priests who read the entrails of sacrificed animals, would watch carefully for omens. They too would gaze at the sky, looking for signs in the patterns of clouds, in the flight of birds. They would listen too for the whispers of the gods carried on the wind. But just as in Egypt and Greece, the message was never clear. The gods did not speak in simple phrases, but in riddles. The birds flew too high, the smoke rose in erratic curls, the bones cracked in directions that led nowhere. And yet the generals and the priests knew that they must proceed, they must act, even in the face of uncertainty, even when the gods themselves seemed to hesitate. The silence was heavy with possibility. It was said that the gods were always present, but they did not always give clear answers. They spoke in symbols, in the language of the earth, the sky, and the stars. And sometimes the generals and priests had to interpret what the gods had not spoken aloud. Was it their belief shaping the outcome, or was it truly the will of the gods that guided them? The smoke curls higher into the night, but its meaning fades as quickly as it rises, leaving only the stillness behind.
As the fire's light flickers in the desert night, the smoke begins to thin, dissipating like the last breath of an ancient song. The generals and priests stand together in the quiet, the fire's glow now dimming to a soft, flickering pulse. Their eyes meet, and in that glance there is an understanding. The gods have not spoken clearly, but the journey must continue. The night stretches out before them, silent and waiting. The stars above remain steadfast, unmoved by the uncertainty below. The moon watches from above, its pale light casting long shadows across the desert. In that moment, the generals and priests breathe as one, their thoughts a shared rhythm, bound together by the unknown. Perhaps the gods were never meant to answer. Perhaps the silence was the message all along. Perhaps the waiting itself was the answer, a reminder that even in the face of uncertainty, there is something sacred in the pause. Perhaps it was never meant to be found, the clarity that comes with victory or defeat. Perhaps the gods only offer guidance in whispers, in signs that are felt but never fully understood. And in the stillness of the night, as the smoke drifts into nothingness, the faith of the generals and priests rests gently in the dark, like a prayer offered up to the stars. In the stillness of the early morning, a soft light begins to spread across the land. The field before you is empty, vast, open, untouched. The grass sways gently in the cool morning breeze, each blade bending in rhythm with the earth, as though it too is taking its time to wake. The silence here is not empty, but full of something ancient. There are no soldiers, no drums, no banners fluttering in the wind. The armies have gone, leaving behind only the trace of their passage, a quiet imprint on the earth, almost forgotten now, as if they were never here at all. The field is marked only by the soft undulations of the land, the gentle rise and fall of the earth. There are no signs of battle, no blood-stained soil, no broken spears or abandoned shields. The ground is untouched, still, as if time itself has paused, waiting for the world to remember. The light from the dawn's first rays touches the earth gently, as though the sun itself is reaching out to tenderly embrace the land, as if to say, "You are safe, you are whole." It is said that there is a victory in the retreat, a wisdom in the choice to withdraw. It is often a decision overlooked in the annals of history, hidden beneath layers of triumphs, of marches to glory. But here, in the quiet of the dawn, the wisdom of withdrawal rests in the very air. It is not a failure, not a defeat, but a quiet act of survival, a preservation of life, of the future, of the world yet to unfold. And in this silence there is a deep, almost sacred reverence for the choice made. The armies are gone, but they are not forgotten. Their departure, though unseen, is no less significant than their arrival. Across the field, the land stretches out into the horizon, the curve of the earth holding secrets known only to those who have walked it with patience. In this empty space, where no feet have tread for hours, there is a deep sense of peace, of stillness. The strategy of withdrawal was never a loud choice. There were no banners waving, no fanfare to mark the moment. It was a quiet decision, made in the heart of a commander, made in the hearts of soldiers who understood the cost of glory and knew that the true victory was not always in the sword's strike, but in the careful preservation of what could be. It is whispered in the halls of time that in many great battles it was not the winning side that carried the deepest wisdom, but the one that chose in the end to leave. The art of retreat is one that few understand. It is not simply turning away, but turning toward something greater. It is the act of stepping back not out of fear, but out of understanding, an understanding that there are moments when survival is more important than victory, and in that survival there is a quiet strength that speaks louder than any battle cry, that rings deeper than any war drum.
The field remains, bathed in the soft light of the rising sun, as if the earth itself breathes in time with the seasons, with the rhythm of the world. The air is cool, carrying the scent of damp earth, of grass kissed by the first light of day. The sky above, once dark and heavy with the weight of night, now stretches wide and clear, dotted with the faintest traces of stars that are beginning to fade with the morning's arrival. The sun's warmth begins to spill over the land, touching every surface with a golden glow, bringing the earth back to life after the cool stillness of night. There is no sound but the gentle rustling of the grass, a soft murmur carried by the wind. The quiet is profound here. It is a silence louder than any victory, louder than any march. It is a silence that holds the weight of the world, the weight of the many decisions that have been made before, the weight of those that will come after. It is a silence that honors the lives spared, the futures that remain untouched, the stories that will continue to unfold without the mark of battle upon them. In this silence, there is a victory that cannot be seen, but can only be felt. And yet, throughout history, the decision to withdraw has been cloaked in shame. It has been rewritten as failure, as weakness, as an act of cowardice. The stories of great victories have often overshadowed the quieter triumphs, those moments where the true victory lay not in the clash of swords, but in the ability to step back, to pull away when the cost of glory is too great. The legacies of those who chose withdrawal have often been lost, their names buried beneath the rubble of history's louder moments. But here, in this field, in this quiet space, there is no shame. There is no victory to claim, no bloodshed to glorify. There is only the land, the untouched grass, the earth that remains whole despite all that has come before. The silence carries with it a reverence for the wisdom of choosing survival over destruction, for the quiet strength found in the art of retreat. Perhaps the gods themselves, in their endless wisdom, knew this truth long before the armies arrived, long before the swords were drawn. Perhaps they understood that not every battle must be fought, that some victories are won in the space between steps, in the silence that follows the retreat. Perhaps the true test of courage is not in the heart that charges forward, but in the one that knows when to step back, when to hold steady, when to wait for the right moment.
As the sun continues to rise, the warmth of its light spreads across the land, casting a golden glow over the field, now bathed in soft hues of sand beige and misty green. The shadows from the trees stretch long across the earth, their forms elongating as the light catches them at the edge of the field. The grass, once still, now moves with the wind, a soft, rhythmic dance, like a breath exhaled from the earth itself. The armies are gone, their footsteps have faded into the dust, leaving no trace but the quiet remembrance of their passage. Their swords, their shields, their banners, all left behind as if they were never there at all. The field remains, untouched and whole, waiting for what comes next, for the stories yet to unfold. Perhaps it was never meant to be found, the true power of withdrawal. Perhaps it is a story not written in the ink of triumph, but in the stillness that follows. Perhaps the most sacred victories are those that are never seen, never shouted from the rooftops, but quietly lived in the spaces between the battles, in the spaces where survival, patience, and wisdom reside. The chapter ends as the sun fully rises, its rays warming the untouched ground, its light spilling over the landscape in waves of gold. The silence remains, deep and sacred, like a prayer whispered in the dark. The field, now bathed in light, is still, and in that stillness, in that perfect moment of peace, the victory of withdrawal is held gently, cradled in the quiet space between breaths.
In the stillness of an ancient library, long abandoned, the air holds the scent of dust and decay. It is a place where knowledge once thrived, where the voices of scholars and strategists echoed among the stone walls. Now, however, there is only silence, a silence so deep it is almost tangible. The once immense shelves, lined with scrolls and manuscripts, stand as crumbling sentinels, their purpose forgotten, their wisdom lost to the winds of time. The light that filters through the broken windows is faint, like a memory fading before it can be fully grasped. A soft breeze stirs the remnants of parchment scattered across the floor. Ash drifts lazily through the air, each flake an echo of something once burning bright. It is as if the knowledge contained within these walls has turned to smoke, slipping through the cracks and into the ether where only shadows remain. The scrolls, once filled with strategies, teachings, and military wisdom, now rest in fragile fragments, tears in the fabric of history. These remnants are not simply words or symbols, they are the essence of battles fought, of empires that rose and fell. And now they are gone, reduced to dust and ash, forgotten by those who never knew their weight. It is said that the greatest of minds once walked these halls, that the greatest military strategists of old spent their nights poring over these very scrolls. But now, all that remains is the echo of their work, their knowledge locked in symbols too faded to read, too scattered to piece together. The teachings that once shaped empires are now no more than whispers caught in the air, fleeting, almost intangible. As the ash drifts in the quiet breeze, the room feels like a memorial to what was lost, an elegy to the minds that once sought to understand the patterns of war and peace, to decode the mysteries of victory and defeat. The knowledge that burned brightly in their minds now burns quietly in the dust, a slow, gentle flame that no longer illuminates. And in that stillness, there is a deep mourning, not for the battles that were fought, but for the silence left behind. In the heart of this ruined library lies the story of a forgotten civilization, one that believed deeply in the art of war, in the strategy that governed every move of its armies. Manuals on tactics, scrolls filled with the wisdom of generals and military philosophers were once housed here, their pages brimming with instructions on how to conquer, how to protect, how to shape the course of history. These writings were sacred, not just for their military insight,
but for the minds that pored over them, shaping strategies that would determine the fate of empires. But time, like the slow erosion of the mountains, wears away even the most steadfast things. The scrolls, once handled with reverence, have crumbled into the dust, their ink faded and their edges torn. The knowledge they contained is now a shadow, a faint echo of something that was once vibrant and alive. It is a loss that is both profound and inexplicable, for in these lost words lies not just military wisdom, but the heart of a civilization that once believed in the power of knowledge to shape the world. The wisdom of military strategy has always been a delicate thing, passed down from generation to generation, carefully guarded, carefully wielded. And yet, as the ashes float gently through the ruined shelves, it becomes clear that this wisdom was always destined to fade. Perhaps it was never meant to last forever. Perhaps the very act of survival demanded its erasure. Perhaps the peace that followed the collapse of the empire was born not from the triumphs of war, but from the forgetting of it, the gentle dissolution of knowledge that in its time might have been too dangerous to keep. And yet, in the quiet mourning of this lost knowledge, there is a strange comfort. Perhaps in the end, the forgetting was necessary. Perhaps there was peace in the letting go, in the shedding of the burden that such wisdom carried. The strategies once written in these scrolls were meant for war, for conflict, for the unrelenting drive of empires to expand and conquer. But with their passing, there is a different kind of freedom, a freedom from the chains of violence, a freedom to rebuild, to renew, to forget the old ways. But this freedom comes at a cost. As the knowledge slips away, so too does the understanding of how to prevent history from repeating itself. The strategies of war, once so carefully mapped out, are lost, buried in the ashes. And the paradox lies in this. Perhaps the very act of preserving peace meant sacrificing the knowledge that could have prevented future conflict. The knowledge that once shaped the world now lies in ruins, a testament to the complexity of war and the deep, painful cost of peace. In the fading light, as the moon rises higher in the sky, there is a single scroll resting untouched on the floor. Its edges are burned, the ink smeared and faded, its writing unreadable in the dim glow. The parchment is fragile but still whole, as though it has been spared from the ravages of time, holding in its fibers the last remnants of something that once meant everything. It rests in the silence, waiting for someone to read it, to understand it, to unlock its meaning. But no one comes. The moonlight casts its pale glow upon it, marking the moment when all knowledge dissolves into mystery. Perhaps it was never meant to be read. Perhaps this fragment, like so many others, is a symbol of something larger, of the unknowable, the unspoken, the parts of history that slip away and never return. Perhaps the gods themselves do not wish us to know the full truth, to understand the full depth of what was lost. Perhaps the answer lies not in the reading, but in the silence that follows, in the pause between the questions and the answers. The light grows dimmer as the night deepens, and the library, now fully enshrouded in shadow, feels at once sacred and forgotten. The dust continues to drift, carried by the quiet breath of the night. There is no movement, no sound, only the faint echo of a history that once was. The knowledge, once so vibrant, now exists only in its absence, in the quiet space it left behind. The room is a quiet memorial, a resting place for wisdom that has faded into the dust. And yet, beneath the silence, there is a lingering sense of mystery, a sense that perhaps the loss is not final, that something remains, hidden beneath the ashes. Perhaps the true meaning of this forgotten knowledge is not in its preservation, but in its dissolution. Perhaps there is something sacred in the forgetting, something necessary in the way the past fades, only to leave room for something new. As the moonlight grows softer, casting its cool glow over the crumbled shelves and scattered fragments of scrolls, the silence deepens, settling over the library like a blanket. The last traces of smoke vanish into the night, and the room is still once more. The earth holds its breath, as if waiting for something, waiting for the next story to unfold, the next wisdom to rise from the ashes. And perhaps, in the end, that is the true knowledge that burned quietly here, the knowledge of renewal, of rebirth, of the peace that comes when the old ways are left behind, and the silence becomes louder than any triumph. The sun has long since dipped below the horizon, leaving behind only the gentle glow of twilight, casting soft shadows over the land. What was once the fervent clamor of an army now lies still, its presence reduced to the lingering echo of footsteps long faded. The stone walls that once stood strong and unyielding are now crumbling, soft and fractured, touched by the gentle caress of time. Their edges are worn smooth, softened by the years, as if the land itself is reclaiming them, welcoming them back into its embrace. The battlefield, once stained with the fire of battle and the weight of ambition, has returned to a peaceful silence. The earth, long disturbed by the tramping of boots, now breathes easily again, the sharp scent of sweat and metal replaced by the rich fragrance of grass and earth. Fields that once bore the scars of war now stretch wide and green, their rolling hills dotted with the vibrant hues of nature's quiet growth. It is as though the land, exhausted by the chaos, has finally been allowed to rest. And so it is that the ancient art of war, of Egypt's balance, Greece's harmony, and Rome's discipline, has faded, leaving behind only the memory of its brief but powerful presence. These civilizations, in their time, sought to shape the chaos of the world, to bend it to their will, to impose order upon the tumultuous forces that surrounded them. But in the end, all that remains is the slow, inevitable return to silence. In Egypt, the art of war was not a matter of brute force, but of balance. It was said that the great pharaohs understood that victory was not won by the sword alone, but by the harmony between the land, the people, and the gods. The armies of Egypt did not march without the guidance of the stars, without the knowledge of the sacred rhythms of nature. Their campaigns were aligned with the cycles of the moon, the flooding of the Nile, and a rising of the sun. To them, war was not chaos, it was a delicate act of restoration, a necessary adjustment to bring about the divine order of the world. And yet, as the years passed and the stone walls crumbled, the echo of Egypt's grand designs fades into the dust. The balance they sought to preserve, the divine order they fought to protect, has dissolved into the earth. The priests who once chanted under the flickering flame of incense are now gone, their voices lost in the silence of time. The gods they invoked have long since left the earth, and the pharaoh's statues lie half buried in the sand, their once great features eroded by centuries of wind and rain. In Greece, the art of war was a matter of harmony. The Greeks, with their love of philosophy and reason, sought to understand the rhythms of war, the patterns that shaped it. They believed that war could be beautiful, like the music of the spheres, with each movement in the battlefield flowing in perfect unison with the whole. The phalanx, their most revered military formation, was not merely a line of soldiers, but a chorus, each man moving in time with the others, each step taken as part of a greater cosmic dance. To the Greeks, victory was found not in the ferocity of battle, but in the alignment of the body and the mind, the unity of purpose, the harmony between man and the forces that governed the world. But now, as the wind whispers through the crumbling columns of once great temples, the harmony they sought has faded too. The stones of Athens, once echoing with the voices of great philosophers and generals, now lie quiet, softened by time. The statues of their gods stand only as fragments, their once pristine forms now dust and shadows. The scrolls that once held the wisdom of strategy, the teachings of philosophers like Plato and Aristotle, have turned to brittle remnants, their pages lost to the ravages of history. The grand harmony they sought to achieve has fallen into silence, and the once vibrant streets of their city-states are now but memories written on the wind. And then there is Rome, where the art of war was discipline, a rigid, unyielding force that sought to impose structure upon chaos. The Roman legions, with their meticulous formations and unwavering commitment, marched across the known world, bringing with them the power of their empire and the iron discipline that defined their military success. Rome's victory was found not in the individual prowess of a single warrior, but in the unity of the legion, in the precision of each movement, each calculated step taken with purpose. Their military campaigns were methodical, each victory a testament to the power of order and structure over the wild forces of chaos. But now, as the great Roman roads, once the arteries of the empire, lie cracked and overgrown, the discipline they so fiercely imposed has slipped away, leaving only the quiet remnants of their once proud civilization. The great walls of Rome, which stood as a testament to their strength and resolve, now crumble beneath the weight of time. The legions that once marched in perfect formation are now nothing more than echoes, their shields and armor lying abandoned, rusted and worn. The empire, once the greatest the world had ever known, has faded into the dust, its legions no longer marching across the earth, but resting in the pages of forgotten histories. As the years pass, the land grows quieter. The echoes of battle, once so loud and persistent, fade into the distance, replaced by the sounds of nature's slow reclaiming. The fields that were once trampled by the march of armies now stretch out in peaceful calm, their grass undisturbed by the weight of boots or the roar of war. The stone walls that once stood tall against the wind are now softened by time, their edges rounded and worn by the gentle passage of centuries. The silence, once so distant, now fills the land, wrapping itself around the ruins like a soft blanket. And in this silence there is a deep acceptance, a quiet surrender to the forces that have shaped the world, that have shaped these empires, that have shaped the very earth beneath our feet. The strategies that once ruled the land, the art of war that sought to bend the chaos to order, are now nothing more than shadows, whispers caught in the wind, Their wisdom, once so vital, is now lost to time, remembered only in fragments, in the stories passed down through the ages, and in the quiet traces they left behind. As the night deepens, the moon rises high above the land, casting its pale light over the fields. The air is cool and still, the land breathing evenly in the quiet of the evening. The ruins, once the seat of great empires, are now quiet, their stories slowly fading into the past. The stars above, ancient and eternal, look down upon the earth with silent knowing, marking the passage of time, the cycles of rise and fall, of birth and decay. The land rests, and history, too, closes its eyes, its breath steady and peaceful, its stories now complete. Perhaps it was never meant to be found, the answers to all the questions we ask about war, about power, about civilization. Perhaps some truths are lost to time, left to fade like the footprints in the sand, waiting to be remembered only by the land itself. Perhaps the true victory lies not in the battles fought, but in the peace that follows them, in the quiet moments when the earth breathes evenly again, when history is allowed to sleep. And so the land rests, the last formation sleeping under the moon's watchful gaze. The silence is profound, and in it there is a peace that needs no victory, no battle, no empire. There is only the quiet breathing of the earth and the memory of what once was. You've now journeyed through the distant echoes of ancient worlds, where generals planned in silence, empires rose and faded, and time continued its endless flow. As these stories drift away, let your thoughts become lighter, your breathing slower, your body completely at ease. There is no need to stay awake. The night will hold you gently. Thank you for spending this quiet moment with Twilight Tale. If sleep has not yet come, allow the silence to finish the story for you. Good night, and may your dreams be calm, timeless, and peaceful.